Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be diving into the story of Dru Sjodin.
Dru Sjodin.
Dru Sjodin. Thank you for that. A name many may recognize. We're going beyond the headlines, though. We got articles, excerpts, even legal documents, all to uncover the lasting impact of her story.
What's fascinating about this case is that it's not just about a tragic crime, This is about how one single event, one person's life, can actually trigger changes across the whole country. The way we think about safety, the way we think about justice, all of that.
Okay, so let's start with who Dru was as a person, because it's easy to get caught up in those headlines. But, she was a real person. She had a whole life.
Right. She's born in 1981, raised in Minnesota, and the sources we've got really emphasize her energy. She just loved to laugh. She was super artistic, too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Played basketball, volleyball, even golf in high school.
Wow, like a real all-rounder.
Exactly, yeah.
Sounds like somebody you'd want to be friends with?
Oh, absolutely. And she, after graduating in 2000, she went on to study graphic arts at the University of North Dakota. And she was really involved in campus life there, particularly her sorority, Gamma Phi Beta. Everything seemed to be pointing towards a really bright future for her.
And then November 22nd, 2003 happened. That's a date that's kind of etched in a lot of people's minds. So what exactly happened that day?
So Dru was walking to her car after her shift at Victoria's Secret in the Columbia Mall. And she called her boyfriend, Chris, while she was walking. And, he hears her say, okay, and then just silence.
My God, that's terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying. And what's even more concerning is that she missed her second job that night at the El Rocco nightclub.
Oh, wow.
So that, combined with the dropped call, immediately set off alarm bells for her family and friends.
Yeah, I can imagine. So what happened next?
Well, they launched this massive search. I mean, massive. It spanned 2 states. Volunteers were everywhere. Just combing through fields, rivers, just desperate race against time. You can really sense that mix of hope and dread in all the descriptions.
Yeah. Heartbreaking to think about. But investigators, they were working pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, they zeroed in on this guy, Alfonso Rodriguez Jr., a level 3 sex offender, which basically means he was considered high risk to reoffend. And get this, he had been released from prison just 6 months before.
Oh my gosh, that's a chilling detail. So what led them to him?
Well, surveillance footage placed him at the mall, and then they found DNA evidence. They found Dru's blood in his car. That sealed the case. And so the arrest was made on December 1st, but that was just the beginning of a very long and painful ordeal.
Oh, yeah. It's hard to imagine what Dru's family and friends must have been going through that whole time.
It's unimaginable, really. And tragically, it took until April 17th, 2004. So we're talking 5 agonizing months after her disappearance before they finally found her body in a ravine near Crookston, Minnesota. And the cause of death was determined to be, sexual assault, beating, stabbing, and a fatal neck wound.
God, that's awful.
Yeah, and the sources we have, they don't shy away from how horrific this crime was, and I think it's important to acknowledge that.
Yeah, absolutely. Did the community rally around the family at all during this time?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Amidst all that just immense grief, there was an outpouring of support, of love. People organized memorials, focused on Dru's positive qualities, her vibrancy, the light she brought into the world. It was a way for them to kind of reclaim her story a little bit, to remember her for who she was, not just as a victim.
Yeah, I could see why this case resonated with so many people. It's like every parent's worst nightmare. But this isn't where the story ends, is it?
No, it doesn't.
There's the trial, sentencing, all that.
Exactly. So the federal trial, it began in 2006 for kidnapping resulting in death, and it got national attention. And during the trial, they laid out all these gruesome details highlighting Rodriguez's, predatory nature and his history of violence.
And what was the outcome of the trial?
So in 2007, the jury delivers a guilty verdict, and Rodriguez is sentenced to death. I imagine that must have felt like some semblance of justice for Dru's family and friends.
You would think, right. But I have a feeling this is not the end of the legal battle.
You have a good feeling.
So what happened next?
So this is where it gets really interesting. Fast forward to September 2021. A judge overturns the death sentence.
Wow. I was not expecting that. Why? Why would they do that?
So the judge found some pretty significant issues with the original trial, particularly the medical testimony that was presented. The way the doctors explained things wasn't clear, and that really ended up influencing the jury's decision.
Oh, wow.
And then there were also concerns that Rodriguez's mental health wasn't, adequately explored during the trial. So this raised some serious legal questions, and that ultimately led to the overturning of the death sentence.
So what happened to Rodriguez then? Did you just walk free?
No, no. Prosecutors ultimately decided not to seek the death penalty again. But in 2023, Rodriguez was resentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
It's incredible how this case, even all these years later, continues to raise these important questions about our justice system, about how we balance punishment with rehabilitation, how we protect the vulnerable people in our society.
It's such a complex issue, and there are really no easy answers, but it's a conversation that we absolutely need to have.
Yeah.
And Dru's story, as tragic as it is, has been kind of this catalyst for that conversation.
And it seems like her case didn't just end with, like, a conviction. It sparked some major changes in how we handle these kinds of crimes.
Right.
I'm thinking specifically about Dru's law.
You're absolutely right. Dru's case brought to light how urgently we needed better public safety measures, especially when it comes to sex offenders. And that's where Dru's law comes in.
Okay, so tell me more about Dru's law. What does it actually do?
Well, it's actually part of this larger piece of legislation called the Adam-Walsh Act, which President Bush signed into law in 2006.
Okay.
And Dru's law specifically created the Dru Sjodin National Sex Offender Public Website, NSOPW for short. Basically, it's this nationwide searchable database that allows anybody to access information about registered sex offenders in their area.
That sounds like a pretty powerful tool for communities. But I can also imagine there are some concerns about privacy and potential misuse of this information.
Oh, you're absolutely right. It's a super complex issue with, valid concerns on both sides. The intention behind the NSOPW is to, empower individuals and communities to be more informed, to be more proactive about safety. But it also raises all these questions about how we balance public safety with individual rights and how we prevent this information from being used to, harass or discriminate against people.
Yeah. It's fascinating how this one case can trigger such a wide-ranging discussion about our laws, our values, how we even approach these super sensitive issues.
Yeah.
But let's not forget about the human side of this story.
Mm-hmm.
Dru's mother, Linda Walker, she became a tireless advocate for change after her daughter's death, right?
Absolutely. Linda Walker, she channeled her grief, which must have been just unimaginable, into action. She became this incredibly powerful voice for victims' rights, pushing for stronger laws, better public safety measures. Her strength and her determination are just remarkable, really.
It's so inspiring to see how, even in the face of such a horrible tragedy, someone can find the strength to fight for change and to try to prevent other people from experiencing that same pain. So besides Dru's law and Linda Walker's advocacy, what other lasting impacts did Dru's case have?
Well, it really exposed the gaps in our system when it comes to offender monitoring and rehabilitation. Remember how the death sentence was overturned partly because of those concerns about Rodriguez's mental health?
Yeah.
That speaks to this much larger issue of how we address mental health within the criminal justice system, both for, public safety, but also for the individuals involved.
It's a really complex issue. There's no easy answers.
Yeah.
But it's clear that Dru's story forced us to confront some of these uncomfortable truths and, ask ourselves some really tough questions about how we can do better.
Exactly. It's about finding that really, really delicate balance between justice for victims while also addressing the root causes of these crimes so that hopefully we can prevent them from happening in the first place.
It's a conversation that I feel like continues to this day, and it's important that we keep talking about it. But before we dive deeper into all that, let's take a moment to reflect on how Dru is being remembered today. How is her legacy being honored?
That's a great question, and it's actually really heartwarming to see all the ways people are keeping her memory alive. So there's a scholarship in her name at the University of North Dakota, and it supports students pursuing the arts, which is something Dru is really passionate about.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful way to honor her spirit and to keep her love for art alive. Are there other ways that people are remembering her?
Yeah, there's a memorial garden dedicated to her in Pequot Lakes, Minnesota, where she grew up. It's this really peaceful place for reflection, surrounded by nature, which seems very fitting given her love for the outdoors. And those are just two examples. There are countless other ways that people keep Dru's memory alive through charitable donations, awareness campaigns, even everyday acts of kindness, inspired by her spirit.
Yeah. It's a real testament to the impact she had on those who knew her and the ripple effect that her story has had on countless others. Even though her life was cut tragically short, her legacy lives on in these acts of remembrance. and these ongoing efforts to create a safer world.
Absolutely. Dru's story is this powerful reminder that even in the face of darkness, there can be light. And it's up to all of us to keep that light shining.
Well said. I think that's a perfect place to pause for now. We've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive, from the heartbreaking details of Dru's disappearance to the lasting impact her story has had on legislation, public safety, and these ongoing conversations about justice and prevention.
It's been a heavy but important journey so far. And in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to explore some of the more nuanced aspects of Dru's case and its broader implications. We'll kind of delve into the complexities of the legal system, the challenges of offender rehabilitation, and this ongoing debate surrounding the death penalty. We'll also look at the ways in which Dru's story has prompted this national conversation about personal safety, awareness, and the steps that we can all take to protect ourselves and our communities.
Stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive into the life and legacy of Dru Sjodin. We'll be back after a short break.
So, we've talked about the immediate impacts of Dru's case, like the manhunt, the trial, the sentencing. But what's really interesting to me is how this event, it just keeps rippling outwards. It prompts these, bigger questions about our justice system as a whole.
Yeah, you're right. We touched on the death penalty being overturned and some of the issues with the original trial. What does that tell us about, the system itself?
Well, I think it really exposes those, inherent complexities and imperfections that exist within any legal system. In this case, the concerns about the medical testimony and whether they fully explored the defendant's mental state, it led to, a major shift in the outcome. Makes you wonder how many other cases might be affected by similar issues.
Yeah, it's a sobering thought. It raises questions about due process, the role of expert witnesses, and how do we actually ensure fairness and accuracy in these legal proceedings?
Exactly. And it also brings up this ongoing debate about the death penalty itself. Is it ever truly just? Can we as a society condone taking a life, even when faced with these just horrific, heinous crimes?
Yeah, those are questions that people have been debating for centuries. There's just no easy answers. I think Dru's case serves as this really stark reminder of the weight of these decisions.
Yeah.
The actual human lives that hang in the balance.
Absolutely. And, beyond the death penalty debate, Dru's story has also sparked all these conversations about how effective our rehabilitation programs are, particularly, for violent offenders. How do we make sure that individuals who pose a threat to society are held accountable, but we also offer them opportunities for genuine rehabilitation and reintegration back into society?
It's such a delicate balance. We want to protect potential victims, but we also need to address what are the root causes of this behavior, and how do we offer pathways for change?
Yeah, exactly. It's not about being soft on crime. It's about being smart on crime. It's recognizing that just locking people up without addressing those underlying issues, it may not be the most effective way to ensure long-term public safety.
This case also seems to, highlight the importance of personal safety and awareness.
Yeah.
What are some lessons that we can, just as individuals, take away from Dru's story?
Well, I think it serves as a chilling reminder that danger can lurk in, seemingly ordinary places.
Yeah.
And it just reinforces how important it is to be aware of our surroundings, trust our gut instincts, and just take precautions to try to minimize risks.
Yeah, it's easy to think it'll never happen to me, but Dru's story shows that, these tragedies, they can strike anyone anywhere.
Exactly. It's not about living in fear, but about being empowered, having that knowledge and those strategies that can really enhance our safety.
So, what kind of things?
Well, simple things like sharing your location with someone you trust, being mindful of your surroundings, having a plan, just in case of emergency. Those things can actually make a big difference.
And what is the role of the community in all this? We talked about how, there was this huge outpouring of support after Dru's disappearance. But how can communities, actively work together to prevent these tragedies from happening in the first place?
Well, I think that's such a crucial aspect of this. It's about fostering a culture of vigilance, looking out for one another. Communities can organize, neighborhood watch programs, support local law enforcement initiatives, and advocate for policies that really make safety and prevention a priority. Creating that kind of environment where everyone feels empowered to speak up if they see something suspicious or if they feel unsafe.
So it sounds like there's a real need for open communication and collaboration between individuals, law enforcement, and community organizations.
Oh, absolutely. It's about breaking down those silos and working together to create this network of support, of protection. And it's not just about reacting to crime, but being proactive and addressing, the factors that might contribute to it in the first place.
What kind of factors are we talking about?
Well, things like poverty, lack of education and employment opportunities, substance abuse, exposure to violence, all those things can really increase the likelihood of criminal behavior. So addressing those root causes through social programs, community outreach, mental health support, all of that is really crucial in preventing crime and creating those safer communities.
So it's not just about punishment and law enforcement. It's about investing in prevention, rehabilitation, and just creating a society where everyone actually has the opportunity to thrive.
Exactly. It's this holistic approach, that recognizes how interconnected crime, poverty, mental health, and social inequity all are. And it's this ongoing effort that requires commitment from individuals, from communities, from policymakers, everyone.
It's clear that Dru's story is so much more than just this tragic crime. It's a catalyst for this much larger conversation about our justice system, our values, and our collective responsibility to create a safer and more just society.
And what's truly remarkable is the enduring legacy of Dru Sjodin. Even in the face of this just horrific event, her spirit just continues to inspire countless acts of kindness, advocacy, this shared determination to try to prevent these future tragedies.
Yeah, her case reminds us that we can't afford to become complacent. We have this responsibility to learn from these tragedies, to demand better from our systems, and to actively work towards creating a world where these horrors, they just become less frequent.
It's about taking that sense of outrage, that grief, and turning it into something meaningful. Taking action. It's about honoring Dru's memory, not just with words, but with deeds.
That's a powerful sentiment. So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, what are some key takeaways you hope that our listeners will, ponder? What are some of those lasting lessons that we can glean from Dru's story and all these ripple effects?
Well, for me, it really boils down to these three essential points. First, we can never take safety for granted. We have to be aware of our surroundings, trust our instincts, take those proactive steps to protect ourselves and the people that we care about.
That's a crucial reminder, especially, in a world today where it's easy to be lulled into this false sense of security.
Absolutely. Second, we need to hold our justice system accountable. We need to demand fairness, transparency, a real commitment to addressing those root causes of crime, not just reacting to the symptoms. Dru's case, it exposed flaws in the system, and it's our job, it's up to us to push for those reforms that ensure justice is served, while also protecting individual rights and promoting rehabilitation.
It's about finding that balance, right, between accountability and compassion, punishment and prevention.
Exactly. And finally, we can never underestimate the power of individual action. Dru's mother, Linda Walker, she turned her unimaginable grief into this incredible force for change. And each of us has that capacity to make a difference, whether it's through advocacy, community involvement, or even just by speaking up for what we believe in.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope and action can still prevail. Dru's story is this call to action for all of us to, work towards a world where these tragedies, they just become less and less frequent.
And that's a vision worth fighting for.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the life and legacy of Dru Sjodin. We hope her story has not only informed you, but also inspired you to, think critically about these important issues and to consider how you can make a difference in your own community and beyond. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into a topic that matters.
It's amazing to me how even in these really dark stories, we can still find these little, these little glimmers of hope and resilience.
Oh, absolutely. Dru's story, it's this really stark reminder of just how fragile life is, but it's also, it's a testament to how strong the human spirit can be, to find meaning, to find purpose, even when faced with, just unimaginable tragedy. Yeah. We've talked about the legal stuff,
Yeah.
the ramifications, the policy changes, all the conversations that came out of Dru's case. But I think it's really important to circle back to that human element.
Yeah, you're right. At its core, this is a story about a young woman whose life was tragically cut short. It's about loss, it's about grief, and it's about the just enduring love of the people who knew her.
It's about how those who loved her, channeled that grief into action. They became advocates for change, working tirelessly to make sure that something like this doesn't happen to anyone else.
Dru's mother, Linda Walker, her dedication to advocating for victims' rights, her tireless work to improve public safety through legislation, through awareness campaigns, it's a true testament to the power of, a mother's love and just this unwavering commitment to honoring her daughter's memory.
Yeah, it's incredibly inspiring to see how she transformed, like, her pain into purpose,
Yeah.
and how she continues to fight for a safer world, in Dru's name.
And it's not just Linda Walker. I mean, countless people, organizations, they've all been inspired by Dru's story to, work towards preventing violence, supporting victims, advocating for a more just, more compassionate society.
It's like this ripple effect that goes way beyond just, the people who knew Dru personally.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even in the face of tragedy, we still have that power to make a difference, to create positive change, to work towards a world where these horrible events, they just happen less and less.
And it all starts with, acknowledging the problem, having those difficult conversations, and then taking action, whether that's personally, as a community, on a societal level, whatever.
We can all play a part in creating a safer world, whether it's being more aware of our surroundings, supporting organizations that are, out there on the front lines working to prevent violence, or even advocating for policies that promote safety and justice.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the life and legacy of Dru Sjodin, I want to leave our listeners with a sense of hope, a sense of empowerment.
Yeah. Dru's story is a tragedy, no doubt. But it's also, it's a catalyst for change. It's a reminder that even in the darkest times, light can still emerge, and that we all have the power to make things, make things a little bit brighter.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. It's been a heavy topic to talk about, but it's also been filled with, I think, really important lessons and, some inspiring stories of resilience, of hope. We hope this deep dive has encouraged you to, think critically about these issues and to consider how you can make a difference in your community and beyond.
Remember, Dru's legacy lives on, not just in our memories, but in the actions we take to create a safer, more just world for everyone.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into a topic that matters.